What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of the Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list of the Commander in front of us on my quest to brew a Magic world. We are running our way through OTJ content. I'm having a ton of fun. I hope you guys are enjoying the brews, but today we are back for the Gitrog Ravenous ride, a 5-mana 6/5 frog horror mount with trample and haste. And it says, whenever the Gitrog Ravenous ride deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice a creature that's saddled at this turn. If you do, we draw X cards and put X land cards from our hand onto the battlefield tapped, where X is that sacrifice creature's power and saddle for 1. So saddle's a new mechanic here in Thunder Junction. It works really a lot like crewing a vehicle, where you could tap 8 creatures with that amount or more power to activate this ability on Gitrog. We can only do it at sorcery speed, so we have to do it before we go to combat. The cool part about it is that the creature that saddles Gitrog doesn't have to have haste, and Gitrog has haste, so Gitrog can start doing its ability the turn it comes down, which is what I think makes it really important. What are we going to do? We're going to play creatures that have a lot of power for their cost. We're going to saddle the Gitrog with them, sacrifice them, and try to dump lands into the battlefield to take bigger and bigger turns. We're going to play a little bit of Landfall because we're going to be doing this multiple lands per turn. And we're going to try to just reach a point where we can just outvalue our opponents and win in combat. Well, let's talk about some of the creatures we want to sacrifice. A pair of really fun creatures that I think work really well for their mana costs are the Daimogoth Titan and Woe Eater. These are both 4 mana creatures. Daimogoth Titan is at 11/10, the Woe Eater is a 7/6. The Titan says whenever it attacks, we sack a creature, or blocks, we sack creature, but it's an 11 power creature for 4 mana, meaning that Gitrog would draw us 11 and put 11 lands if we have them. Daimogoth Woe Eater is a 7/6, so again 7 for 4 mana. Same thing with the Hunted Horde to the right of it, 7/7 for 2 mana. Now it says when it ETBs, target opponent creates 2 centaurs with protection from black, meaning that, you know, Gitrog will still be able to get through on that person if those are the only creatures they have. But again, the point is we're getting as high amount of the power as we can relatively for the cost that we're trying to spend for it. And we don't mind if the creatures have downsides because we're not necessarily looking to use them, we're looking to sacrifice them to Gitrog. We have Lupine Prototype, 5/5 for 2 mana that can't attack or block unless player has no cards in their hand, and doesn't matter, 2 mana to sack that 5/5 to Gitrog. Pugnacious Hammerskull from LCI, 3 mana 6/6. Old Man Willow is a 4-mana star, where star is the number of lands we control, which means he actually gets better as the game goes on. Not only that, but Old Man Willow can be a great creature towards the end of the game. We play a couple creatures in the deck that are star, where star is the number of lands we control, and they're going to get better and towards the end of the game because they're going to be big beaters for us to beat through our opponents with. Overwhelmed Hydra comes in and get us a land card put on the battlefield tapped. It's a star, so it can be something that either in the late game becomes a great attacker, or in the early game can get onto Gitrog and get us good draws. Rotting Register is a 7 power for 3. Same thing with Shakedown Heavy, 6 power for 3. So again, you see these creatures that we're getting the max level on, and then the page that will make most of the people who probably have thought about it happy. You have Yargle and Montanian 18 for 6 mana, and then Yargle 9 for 5 mana. So again, just these meme creatures, but again, in this deck, they're going to be so much value for Gitrog. And then Vaultborn Tyrant. What I like about Vaultborn Tyrant is it has a great ability. Whenever a creature power 4 greater comes in, we gain 3 life and draw a card. But if it dies, we get a copy of it. Except the copy is an artifact, meaning we can do it multiple times for 6 for our 7 mana investment. And I think that's important. But it's not just about sacrificing the creatures, right? We want to recur them and do it again. I think that's the important part, is taking the creatures back from our graveyard and doing it again. So we're playing things like Reanimate and Victimize, you know, to get those creatures back out of our graveyard. But we're also really playing things like Feign Death and Malakir Rebirth and Supernatural Stamina to choose that creature before we sacrifice it, then sacrifice it and have it come back to the battlefield tapped, you know, and then next turn we can do it again, but we still get that benefit twice, and then if it has an ETB, we would get that. But the point is that we're paying 1 mana to effectively get that creature again and use its ability again. And there's something like Phyrexian Reclamation, just to pay 2 mana and pay 2 life to get a creature back, which I think is still important. But I think where the deck shines is not ignoring that we have a bunch of landfall payoffs here, since we're going to be playing multiple lands per turn. Avenger of Zendikar could be a house entirely in itself when we're dropping 5 or 6 lands on an average turn. Bristly Bill, so if ever a land comes in, we can put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, meaning we can make Gitrog or other attackers really big as those lands come in. Green Sleeves is another one of our stars where stars a number of lands we control. Whenever a land comes in, we get a 3/3 Badger. So now we're going wide. We're risking our opponents having to deal with a wider board state. Same thing with Rampaging Baloths, making a 4/4 Beast when lands come in. Tireless Visitor can make us either a food or treasure. I like Roaring Earth, kind of another copy of that Bristly Bill type effect, putting a counter on a creature or a vehicle we control. So again, we're kind of paying off these lands coming in. The only bad part of +1/+1 counters, right, is that these lands come in after Gitrog's already dealt damage. So that can be a little bit rough in some scenarios, but I think it's this value over a turn or two that's going to probably swing the game in our favor. Splunking can make our lands come in untapped. We're also playing Amulet of Vigor in the deck to do the exact same thing as well. Zedekar's Royal, making us a 2/2 elemental every time a land comes in. And then Nissa gets a loyalty counter every time a land comes in. Her +1 can untap a land, but the -5 can put a creature card with mana value less than the number of lands we control onto the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters, meaning that, Nissa can just cheat in those massive creatures. We're playing things like Galta, big 12/12. We're playing some of these just massive creatures, and Nissa can help us cheat them down, especially things like those Damegoth Titan. That's a 4-mana creature we could cheat down with Nissa. It would come in as a 13/12 because of the counters, and now that's just massive value for 4 mana. But okay, so we talked about the creatures sacrifice, we talked about landfall. At the end of the day, we want to try to win the game. And there's a couple ways we can do this. Zopandrel and Natural Growth both double the power and toughness of each creature we control at the beginning of each combat. This can be great for attacking, right? Because Gitrog could get big enough to the point that it can just knock people out with commander damage. But also our board state could just get wide enough that our opponent now has to deal with big, massive creatures that they don't want to deal with. And then Overwhelming Stampede in the middle can just be an overrun Alpha Strike type effect for us to run our entire board into our opponents and try to win that way. At the end of the day, I think we're going to have a good chance to either start really threatening people with Gitrog when it comes to commander damage, or just go wide enough with our landfall abilities that unless our opponents can deal with it, we're probably just going to bowl them over and win the game. But I've said it before and I'll say it again, no deck's perfect. This is just my version 1.0 deck list for the deck. And there are some cards that I really wanted to include that just didn't make the cut that I don't want to not mention. The first is Torment of Hailfire, probably one of the most popular black game enders when it comes to having a lot of mana. Torment of Hellfire is a brutal card. It can end a game very quickly, and I think it's well worth the slot. I just wasn't sure what to cut for it. Conduit of Worlds is a way to get lands back out of your graveyard. I am choosing to play the original Gitrog in the list, and there are some other things that can benefit with lands coming back out of the graveyard, but it's not the main goal of the list, so I didn't put like Conduit of Worlds or Crucible of Worlds in the deck. But if you want to build more into that, you could certainly do that to get some value. And then Tiller Engine kind of is another copy of that Splunking, where when a land comes in tapped, we can either tap it, untap it, or we can tap target non-land permanent opponent controls if we need to do certain things, tap down blockers or set up certain board states that we need. And so I really like Tiller Engine. I just couldn't find a slot for it in the 100, in the 99 cards I was looking at. But let's get into our playtest. Keeping a 2/3 lander, Rogue's Passage, Bojuka Bog, and that Mortuary. We see Rotting Registrar, a great card for Gitrog. We see Skullspore Nexus, which is a great card that can get tokens when non-token creatures die, meaning we can do those abilities again. And then Multani, Yarrow Multani for a big, big play. And we see that Assassin's Trophy for a little bit of removal. Turn 1, we might as well play the Mortuary. We got nothing else better to do. Surveil 1, and we see a Swamp. I like it. We got to get up to 5 for Yargle, or for Gitrog. And I don't necessarily want to have Rotting Registrar out longer than I need to, right? If that's what we're going to want to do, maybe like play it the turn before Gitrog, or I don't want to keep it out too long and have to pitch too many cards. But I guess turn 2 we play that Swamp. We can keep up the Assassin's Trophy again. I don't really see us, accomplishing much more than that. Turn 3 we'll play the Forest. I wish I had something better to do, but again, I don't know that I want to run out the Registrar. Here's probably where I would make that decision. If I'm playing a table where people aren't being super aggressive, I might just play the Registrar here. Yeah, we're going to have 2 turns of discarding cards, but maybe I can make it work in the current state. The problem is I need those 2 other lands to play Gitrog. But I think in this case, I would just keep up the Assassin's Trophy and worst case scenario, we get there. Here, turn 4, I'd put down the Bazooka Bog. Probably going to have no one's graveyard to actually hit. But here, I'd probably actually cast the Rotting Regisaur. I'll pitch a land next turn to have this down for when Gitrog comes in and do it for 7. I think it's well worth the cost. Start of our upkeep, actually. So I apologize. Before we draw, we will get... probably makes more sense to pitch the Swamp than the Rogue's Passage. We would draw, play the Rogue's Passage, and now we'd get Gitrog going. Comes in, has Trample and Haste. I would go ahead and... Oh, geez. I would go ahead and saddle with Rotting Regisaur. Attack. At this point on turn 5, I doubt there's going to be a person we can't trample over into. And now, effectively, what's going to happen is we're going to draw 6 and put 6 lands down. And this is the brutal example where we don't draw a single land, which happens in the deck. We do have a fairly, in my opinion, a higher land count. But this was going to be a possibility. But I think the thing to remember in this deck is when we completely whiff, now we get a chance to better choose what we want in our hand. We make sure we have the things that we really want to have. Rancor is great. I think it might be a little bit late, so we'd pitch it at the end of the turn. Damegoth Titans, again, great setup for next turn. I like the Spelunking. We have Putrefy and the Assassin's Trophy. I like the Skullspore Nexus. Might pitch the Farseek. I think we're a little bit late for it. I hate the idea of pitching the Putrefy, so I think I'd pitch the Woe Eater. And this is a rough 8 cards to pick from. I guess we'll pitch the Putrefy. Again, brutal scenario where we draw no lands out of our top 7. Did I draw 6 or 7? I think I drew 6, and I apologize if I did draw 7, but there we go. That would have been one land we got put down. But now we start our next turn. Again, we need something down for Gitrog to get going. 6 mana now. We do have Yargle and Multani to take an absolutely monstrous turn if that's what we want to do. We could also just Damegoth Titan. We are 1 mana off the Titan and Spelunking, but we could Spelunking and Shakedown Heavy if we wanted to do that, and that would actually allow us to... oh, damn it. It was actually a card that allowed us to saddle up Gitrog here for 6, and then the lands could come in tap, so we could definitely get something else down. But let's say we get Gitrog in there, sacrifice the... Shakedown Heavy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We get 1, 2, 3 lands in. They actually come in untapped, right, because of the Spelunking. So we have 3 mana. We could do a couple things. We could get the Prototype down. We could get, I think we got to get something down because, again, we're going to end up pitching here again, but that's okay. I probably just pitched the Beast Within because the Zofendral feels really good next turn. And now we go another turn. I think I like getting the... Do we get the Damegoth Titan here? We have 9 mana. We can give Gitrog Fear, so it could be unblockable potentially. We could go deep on the Titan. So that's 4. We'd have 5 left. We could set up, well, let's think about this. Hold on. We do have Skullspore Nexus for 2 mana. I think I'd do that. Then I would do the Damegoth Titan. So that leaves 3 left. We could keep up, Assassin's Trophy. I would go ahead and do the Damegoth Titan for Gitrog. Smash Gitrog in somewhere. Draw 11. And again, I think at this point, we're just digging for more. Do the same thing. I mean, this is really the play line that we're going to be doing. Sacrificing things, drawing, trying to get our board state even better. Second playtest, 4-lander with a Shia, Shakedown Heavy, and a Beast Within. Not a bad start. A little bit of everything. Get a Swamp down. Turn 2, we see a Nature's Lore. Perfect. We'll use it just to get ourselves a little bit ahead on mana. I think I would go ahead and get the... Mortuary, just to take a peek at what's on top, see if we can do anything with it. It's a Tireless Provisioner, which wouldn't be bad. It's just not really a good thing to sacrifice to Gitrog. And I think next turn I kind of want to get something down to sacrifice to Gitrog, but Here we go, I'd probably get the Swamp down and get that Shakedown Heavy down, so that next turn when Gitrog comes down, we can use the Shakedown Heavy to sacrifice it for Gitrog. Turn 5, put that Lochthwain down, tap the Shakedown Heavy, sack it. I mean, at this point, we're going to get in 5 and 6. 1 and 2. We only used... I don't think we used 5 of that mana, and those came in tapped, right? Yeah, so we're gonna have to pitch down here. I like the idea of keeping the dark ritual, of course. That's a great spell there. So Ashaya is pretty good right now. It would come in and give us a bunch of value. We'd be able to get it back with something like Reanimate, or we could just, you know, reanimate Ashaya. But I think I would go ahead and we don't want to dump Patuka's Bog because we could have put that down. Now that I think about it, right? Because it was already in our hand. It's not off cards either. So I guess I just got to pitch 1 here. I'll pitch the Provisioner, I guess. At the end of the day, we're getting more value down. This turn, 8 mana. I love the idea of something like Vaultborn Tyrant or Ashaya plus the Stamina to bring it back. I think Tyrant would make the most sense here because you'd pay the 7, tap it for Gitrog's, tap it to saddle up Gitrog. Then when Gitrog hits here, we would play the Stamina in response to the trigger. And Tyrant would become an 8/6. We would sacrifice it. The copy of it would come back. The copy of it would come because of its ability, but then it would come back to the battlefield tapped. And now we draw 8, draw 8 into our ability. 1, 2, 3, and thankfully we hit the Reliquary Tower, so we're no longer worried about land size. And now we have 2, Vaultborn Tyrants next turn to start swinging at people. All we need is a Trample Enabler with something like a Natural Growth, which is going to start making it harder for opponents. And I like this state now because, again, we're getting into that. Sacrifice things every turn and get the game plan going. But let me know, what do you think of Gitrog down in the comment section below. This is a deck, to me, that seems really interesting. Golgari, Stompy, and just a fun effect to get the lands down, get the game plan moving. And then if you remove Gitrog, it's okay, because eventually we'll have enough lands we can just replay Gitrog anyway. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys next time.